In life, talent and hard work can build success, but only integrity decides how long that success will last. Success without integrity is like a building without a strong foundation. It may stand for a while, but it will eventually fall. In this story, you will hear the story of a man that was not honest in his work, and at the end of the day, he faced the consequences of his own action. So stay with this story till the very end to learn how important it is to be honest in whatever we do. In Los Angeles, a city driven by ambition, appearance often matters as much as achievement. Among the many people chasing success in this competitive environment was Logan Matthew, a man who had managed to build a strong name for himself in the landscaping industry. Logan owned a growing company that handled high-end projects across the city. From luxury homes in Beverly Hills to commercial properties in downtown Los Angeles, his work could be seen almost everywhere. His designs were admired, his contracts were expanding, and his business was considered one of the rising names in the field. To the outside world, Logan represented discipline and success. He spoke with confidence in meetings, negotiated deals smoothly, and maintained a reputation that attracted both clients and investors. Many believed he was simply a hard-working man who had earned everything through effort and intelligence. But behind this polished image, Logan operated differently when no one was watching. In his company, decisions were often made based on profit rather than principle. Premium materials requested by clients were sometimes replaced with cheaper alternatives. Labor hours were adjusted quietly to reduce costs. Even when workers raised concerns, their voices rarely changed anything. To Logan, these choices were not seen as wrongdoing. He believed they were necessary adjustments to stay ahead in a competitive market where everyone, in his opinion, was cutting corners in one way or another. For a long time, everything seemed to work in his favor. The business kept growing, the money kept coming in, and his reputation remained strong. What Logan failed to realize was that success built on weak foundations always carries a hidden risk, one that only reveals itself when it is too late to fix it. Beneath every polished success story, there is often a version of the truth that never makes it to the surface. Logan had built a system that rewarded speed and profit above everything else. Materials were often chosen based on cost rather than quality. Suppliers who offered cheaper options were preferred, even when they did not meet the original specifications requested by clients. It was a system that looked efficient from the outside, but quietly compromised the foundation of every project. Workers noticed these patterns, but most stayed silent. Speaking up rarely changed anything, and many depended on their jobs to survive in an expensive city like Los Angeles. So they adapted, did their work, and avoided conflict. Logan, however, saw nothing wrong with it. In his mind, he was simply staying competitive in a market where everyone tried to reduce costs and increase profit margins. He believed he was not breaking rules, just bending them slightly in his favor. To him, it was business intelligence. What he did not notice were the small warnings beginning to form. Minor construction issues were being overlooked. Some projects were completed faster than they should have been, leaving behind details that had not been fully checked. These were not obvious failures yet, but they were cracks forming slowly beneath the surface of his growing success. Still, Logan remained confident. The contracts were increasing, the money was flowing, and no client had officially complained. At least not yet. And in his world, silence meant approval. In every story of rising success, there is always someone whose quiet presence carries more weight than it first appears. Marcus David arrived in Los Angeles with nothing but determination and the hope of rebuilding his life. He was a single father who had faced more hardship than he ever spoke about. After losing stability in his previous city, he moved to California believing that hard work could still open doors, even in a place as expensive and competitive as Los Angeles. He was not looking for luxury or comfort. He was looking for opportunity. When Marcus heard about a landscaping company hiring workers, he applied without hesitation. He did not have connections, and he did not have a strong resume filled with impressive names. What he had was experience, discipline, and a willingness to start from the bottom if necessary. Logan Matthew's company hired him quickly. They needed workers, and Marcus did not ask for much. His wage was low, his position was basic, and his responsibilities were physically demanding. Still, Marcus accepted everything without complaint. To him, it was a beginning. From his first day, Marcus approached the job differently from the others. He arrived earlier than expected, stayed longer than required, and observed every detail of the work around him. While others focused on finishing tasks quickly, Marcus focused on how well the work was being done. He noticed things that most workers ignored. The way soil was being prepared too quickly, the way drainage systems were sometimes rushed, and the way certain materials did not match the quality promised in the project plans. Marcus did not speak much, but he paid attention to everything. Over time, his consistency began to stand out. Even under the harsh California sun, he worked with patience and precision. There was no arrogance in him, only focus. Slowly, he became one of the few workers who could be trusted with more responsibility. What Marcus did not know yet was that his attention to detail would soon place him on a path that would directly collide with the man who owned everything he was working on. In a workplace driven by speed and profit, those who notice too much are often the first to be ignored. Marcus David continued working at Logan Matthew's landscaping company, slowly becoming known as one of the most dependable workers on site. While others rushed through assignments just to finish the day early, Marcus treated every project as if it carried long-term consequences. He paid attention to what most people overlooked. Marcus did not have formal authority, but he had something else, awareness. Still, he remained quiet for the most part. Not because he had nothing to say, but because he was careful about when to speak. One afternoon, while working on a large estate project, Marcus observed the crew preparing the foundation of a luxury garden walkway. The process felt rushed, and the materials being used did not match what the design required. He hesitated for a moment before approaching the foreman, asking a few careful questions. His concerns were brushed aside without much thought. Just follow the plan, he was told. But Marcus could not ignore what he saw. Something about the structure felt unstable, as if it would not withstand heavy weather over time. He made a mental note and continued working. What he did not realize was that this particular project was not just another assignment. It was connected to something much larger, something that would soon expose the difference between shortcuts and consequences. And unknowingly, Marcus had already stepped into the center of it. The Hollywood Hills project was Logan Matthew's biggest contract yet. It was a luxury estate commissioned by a wealthy real estate developer, and completing it successfully would elevate his company into an elite category of contractors in Los Angeles. For Logan, this was not just another job. It was an opportunity to reach a higher level of success, recognition, and profit. But opportunity, in his mind, always came with one rule: reduce cost wherever possible. As the project progressed, Logan pushed his team to move faster. Deadlines were tightened, materials were adjusted to cheaper options, and labor hours were minimized. Every decision was made with one goal: maximize profit while maintaining appearance. On site, Marcus noticed the pressure building. Work that required careful execution was being rushed. The foundation layers, in particular, were not being reinforced properly. The structure looked fine on the surface, but beneath it, Marcus could sense instability forming. He could no longer stay silent. One afternoon, Marcus approached Logan respectfully while he was reviewing project documents. "Sir," Marcus began cautiously, "the foundation we're using for the lower structure, it's not strong enough. If heavy rain hits, it could shift or collapse. We need reinforcement before we continue further." Logan barely looked up. "I've been in this industry long enough, Marcus," he replied flatly. "We don't need delays. Just follow the instructions and get the job done." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then nodded quietly. But as he walked away, he knew something important had just been set in motion, not just for the project, but for everyone involved. Every decision driven by greed begins with a small compromise that feels harmless at first. For Logan Matthew, the pressure of the Hollywood Hills project was not something he feared, it was something he believed he could control. The contract was massive, the client was influential, and the profit margin promised to elevate his company into a new level of prestige in Los Angeles. But Logan had one habit that followed him into every major project: reducing costs wherever possible, no matter the risk. As work continued, he made subtle but impactful changes to the original plan. Premium-grade materials were replaced with cheaper alternatives that looked similar on the surface. Labor time was reduced to speed up completion. Some structural recommendations from engineers were quietly ignored because they would have slowed progress and increased expenses. To Logan, these were not dangerous choices. They were efficient adjustments. Results matter more than process, he often told himself as justification. Meanwhile, Marcus continued observing the project with growing concern. The foundation work felt rushed, and the structural balance of the landscape design seemed unstable. Each day confirmed his fear that shortcuts were being taken in places where precision was critical. But Logan no longer had patience for warnings. Whenever concerns were raised, he dismissed them immediately. The goal was clear: finish fast, deliver visually impressive results, and move on to the next contract. What Logan failed to realize was that some problems do not appear during construction, they reveal themselves only when pressure is applied. And in Los Angeles, pressure often comes in the form of nature itself. It started with something that seemed ordinary in Los Angeles: a change in weather. Heavy rain clouds gathered over the city after weeks of dry heat. At first, it felt like a relief. But for structures built without proper reinforcement, it was the beginning of a silent disaster. The Hollywood Hills estate, once a symbol of luxury and precision, began to show early signs of failure. Marcus noticed it first. Small shifts in the soil. Minor cracks forming along the walkways. Water not draining as it should. These were not sudden damages, they were the result of rushed decisions made weeks earlier. One night, after hours of continuous rainfall, the foundation gave way. The first sound was subtle. A deep cracking beneath the ground. Then came the shifting. Stone pathways began to fracture, decorative landscapes collapsed into sinking soil, and carefully designed sections of the estate started breaking apart under pressure. By morning, the damage was undeniable. The once impressive property had turned into a disaster zone. News spread quickly. For Logan Matthew, the call came early. At first, it sounded like a routine update from the site. But as the words became clearer, his expression slowly changed. The Hollywood Hills project had failed. Not partially. Completely. By the time he arrived at the estate, the damage was already being assessed by engineers and investigators. The sight alone was enough to silence any confidence he had left. Walkways were broken into uneven fragments. Sections of the landscape had sunk into the soil. What once looked like a luxury design was now a structural failure exposed in broad daylight. The developer was already there. And he was furious. "What exactly did you build here?" he demanded, his voice sharp with anger. Logan tried to explain, tried to defend the efficiency, the speed, the adjustments made to stay within budget. But none of his words carried weight anymore. The evidence was already speaking louder than he could. Engineers confirmed what Marcus had once warned: critical reinforcement had been ignored, and substandard materials had been used in key areas of the structure. Within days, the situation escalated beyond control. Legal notices arrived. Contracts were cancelled. Word spread quickly through Los Angeles construction circles. A company once praised for efficiency was now being discussed as an example of failure. Clients began pulling away. Partners stopped answering calls. Projects that once filled Logan's schedule were suddenly reassigned to other contractors. And for the first time, Logan Matthew experienced something he had never prepared for. Silence. Sitting alone in his office overlooking the city skyline, he replayed every decision in his mind. Every shortcut. Every ignored warning. Every moment he dismissed caution in favor of speed. And somewhere in those thoughts, one voice kept returning: Marcus. But by then, it was already too late to undo anything. While Logan Matthew's world was collapsing, something unexpected was already taking shape in the background. Marcus David was called to a private meeting with the developer. He arrived without expectation, only prepared to answer questions honestly. What he did not know was that his quiet observations and careful documentation had already been reviewed in detail. During the investigation, Marcus's notes stood out. He had recorded inconsistencies in materials, structural concerns, and rushed decisions from the early stages of the project. More importantly, he had communicated his concerns respectfully before the collapse occurred. That level of honesty and awareness did not go unnoticed. The developer made a decision. The entire reconstruction of the Hollywood Hills estate would be entrusted to Marcus. At first, Marcus hesitated. He was not a company owner. He did not have a large team or a polished corporate image. He was simply a worker who paid attention to details others ignored. But for the first time, that quality was being recognized as an advantage, not a limitation. With careful planning, Marcus began assembling a small but skilled team. This time, there were no shortcuts. Every material was verified. Every stage of construction was inspected. Every decision was made with long-term stability in mind rather than speed. What Logan once rushed, Marcus rebuilt with patience. And slowly, the project began to transform, not just structurally, but symbolically. Time has a way of exposing what effort tries to hide. For Logan Matthew, the silence became unbearable. The same office that once echoed with phone calls, negotiations, and confidence now held nothing but regret. He had lost more than contracts. He had lost trust. And sitting alone, with nothing left to defend, Logan finally saw the truth he had avoided for so long. His failure did not begin with the collapse of the project, it began with the small decisions he made long before that moment. Decisions he justified. Decisions he repeated. Decisions he believed would never catch up with him. But they did. And they came all at once. Across the city, a different story was unfolding. Marcus David stood on the same ground where failure once happened, but this time, everything was different. The rebuilding process was steady, careful, and intentional. Every layer was reinforced. Every material was chosen with purpose. There was no rush, no pressure to impress, only a commitment to do things the right way. And slowly, the results began to speak. The project was not just being rebuilt, it was being redeemed. People who once doubted now paid attention. Not because Marcus demanded recognition, but because his work reflected something rare, consistency guided by integrity. And from everything that happened, 4 lessons became clear from this story. 1. Integrity determines the lifespan of success. You can rise quickly without it, but you will never last. 2. Shortcuts don't eliminate effort, they delay consequences. What you avoid today will return tomorrow, often with greater impact. 3. Ignoring truth doesn't protect you from it. The warnings you dismiss are often the ones that matter most. 4. True success is built slowly, but it stands firmly. What Marcus built took time, but it could not be easily shaken. In the end, the difference between Logan and Marcus was not opportunity. It was choice. One chose convenience over character. The other chose integrity over speed. And that single difference changed everything. Because no matter who you are, and no matter how far you go, life always returns what you give it. At the end of the day, we all reap what we sow. Life doesn't reward what you pretend to be, it reveals who you truly are. You can hide shortcuts behind success, cover dishonesty with results, and convince the world that everything is fine, but time has a way of uncovering every hidden truth. And when that moment comes, there are no excuses left, only consequences or rewards. So while no one may be watching you right now, your choices are being recorded in ways you cannot see. Because one day, everything you've built, good or bad, will speak for you. And when it does, it will tell the story of what you truly chose to sow. If this story inspires you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to people that you think needs to hear this story. See you in the next video.